Everything that you desire to be, you already are. Everything that you hunger for already exists within you. Every prayer that you utter, whether in jubilation or desperation, has already been answered. Thank you so much for coming. God bless. Have a great day. Everything that you crave and you hunger for, you already are. It's the seminal truth that exists in all of this thing called life. And yet, it is the one thing that we forget the most. And so we've often said then that our journey and our reason for being in this human incarnation isn't so much about learning anything. Because that which we're striving to learn, what? We already know. And so really what we're doing is we're going through and we are unlearning, or we are stripping away, or we are removing the veils, or we are shining a light on our own ignorance, our own domestication, our own falsification that we have somehow given credence to. We're shining a light on that, and we are coming to a decision point. And that decision point is whether or not we will continue to feed that lie, or whether we will, in that moment, make a very profound U-turn and go back within rather than seeking outward. Everything that you desire to be, you already are. Sit with that for a moment. And just notice, measure inside of you, create a spiritual litmus test about how much you actually resonate to that or enthused about that, or you're just pissed off about it. Because once you really surrender yourself to that, you can no longer blame anything outside of you. You are no longer powerless to any institution, any belief system, any doctrine, anything that tells you that you are less than. You are not imprisoned by that. You are no longer at the mercy of your family dynamic or what your family did to you, unless you choose to live under that level of oppression. So life then becomes a free will jubilation of choice and choice and choice and choice and choice, over and over and over again, in those moments when the material world does its best to try to intervene and tell us that we don't have that, or we can't do that, or we are not enough, and we buy into it. And so there's a diligence, there's a high watch that is required of us as spiritual beings to live in integrity with our inherent nature. This whole month, again, has been centered around the idea of the power of the inherent you. Just think about that for a moment. The power of the inherent you. What is that power? The power of the inherent you. The inherent you is what? Everything that we equate to infinite intelligence. That's the power that's inside of you. The power that is within you, the inherent you, is everything that is wise and everything that is fulfilled and everything that is creative and everything that is respectful and everything that is immeasurable and everything that is boundless in its ability to bring manifestation and creation into manifestation. That's what the inherent you, the inherent we is. And the power of that rests solely in one thing. How do you use it? And do you use it? So think for a moment how we become so seduced, just in one day, how we become so seduced in our forgetfulness. And we look at other people and we look at their accomplishments and we look at what they have, and immediately we go to this place of less than and forget that the inherent us has everything that we need. So if that's true, why are we not accessing it? If everything that you crave and hunger for is on this metaphoric banquet, why are we not consuming it? and enjoying it because it is rightfully ours. And so the book this month was written by a man named Christian Larson. I bet you know him because he wrote something that was picked up by the Optimist Club, the Optimist Creed, and it was never forget that you are powerful beyond measure, and it became this global phenomenon. But Christian Larson was also a forebearer of why you're here today. Did you know that? Did you know that you're connected to Christian Larson? Well, let me tell you how that happened. So there was this guy named Ernest Holmes. Have you ever heard of Ernest Holmes? He wrote a book called The Science of Mind, which my glasses just broke. So the inherent me doesn't need them because I'm going to read. But didn't they kind of look fabulous, weren't they? A little Swifty Lazar action. And so, anybody got glasses, David? I'll give you, see everything that I need, I have right here. There. Oh, great, thank you. All right. So Christian Larson wrote this book. It was one of his first books, and it was called The Ideal Made Real. And at the time that it came out, around 1912, Ernest Holmes was studying still with Mary Baker Eddy, who is famous for starting the Christian Science movement. And when Ernest got a hold of a copy of The Ideal Made Real, he turned immediately from his studies from Mary Baker Eddy and became absorbed and consumed and fascinated by the idea that thoughts become things. Thoughts become things. Thoughts, meaning the energy by which we are using mind activity, the mental equivalents that we form in our mind, those actually become physical manifestations. Because it's all energy, and energy then moves and goes into that level of formation. And so Ernest was so captivated by that he started to consume this book called The Ideal Made Real, which is free, by the way. If you go and Google it, you can download it for free. And he came upon this phrase, and it said, "Do not simply yearn for what you can see." Do not simply just sit there and yearn for what you can see. And do not covet what has not yet become your own, but proceed to make yourself into the likeness of that ideal. So, what is he saying? Don't just sit there and bemoan the fact that you don't have this thing that you long for. Don't just sit there and look at what someone else has and then covet that and think that because they have it, you don't have access to that. But begin to look at the thing that you desire and move yourself into the likeness of that ideal. What does that mean? The likeness of that ideal. We must begin to assume the identity. We must become the physical, mental, spiritual prototype of the thing that we say that we want. And then, by that passage of consciousness, by that shift within our own mind, we develop within ourselves the acquisition of that thing which has already been in existence. But you see, everything that I crave, I already am. I will not experience that I am until I become at one with it inside of me. It doesn't work any other way. I know of no one who speaks of illness, who researches illness, who identifies with illness, who entertains illness, who will not be a stellar instrument of illness. And yet wholeness still what? Exists. I know of no one who speaks of limitation, prepares for limitation, fears limitation, and believes in limitation, who will experience nothing other than limitation, and still plenty abounds. I know of no one who speaks of victimization, identifies with victimization, nurtures their victimization, adjusts their goals around victimization, who will rise further than a ceiling of victimization. And the gateway to freedom always exists in mind. Christian Larson said, to proceed with this great development, the whole of life must be changed to conform with the exact science of life. Let me repeat that. So how do I, when Ernest said, you can't simply yearn for that, you can't covet what someone else says. When he read that, he says, I must proceed to make myself into the likeness of that ideal. And to proceed with this great development, the whole of life, the whole of your life, the entire capsule, the whole holistic pie of your creativity, your spirituality, your physicality, your actions, your words, your deeds must become congruent with that ideal. And then that becomes the science of this life. And we are all scientists in a laboratory called life. But it's dependent upon how much of our life are we committing to this process. Just a little bit or the whole of our life. So Christian Larson said that the consciousness of the I am is the open door to the limitless vastness of the spiritual universe. The consciousness of the I am. What's that? Everything that you crave, everything that you desire, everything that you pray for, you already are. The I amness of you. How much of the I amness of you are you allowing to live through you? That's what the consciousness of that is. I can't have prosperity in my life ceaselessly flowing to me, not be worried or upset about its absence, if I don't have the consciousness of that I amness, of that free-flowing sustainability within my life. It doesn't mean that it's not there, but I am unwilling, or I am ignorant, or I am resistant to allowing the I amness of that to be the wholeness of my life. Why would I do such a thing? Because my story of damage is so compelling. And I have centered my identity around my story of damage. In fact, all of my friends, we all have the same story. What will happen to my friends if I stop telling that? You know, I came across this statement, said there's an old saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Sit down for a minute, start to jot down. You are the average of those 5 people. You are the average of the consciousness of those people. And so if we're not spending time with people who are leaning into, who are surrendering themselves to the wholeness of life, who are moving like Nathan's doing into the next great expression, who are taking every single opportunity to expand and to open and to grow and to learn and to unlearn and to make ourselves available to that level of wholeness, to that divine ideal, then we are shortchanging ourselves, and it's no one else's fault but ours. And so to empower ourselves in this consciousness of the I am, we must surrender the whole of our life, and we must come to the understanding that everything that we seek outside of us is dwelling within. So he wrote this sort of tongue twister. He said, in other words, you must become the conscious of the I am within you, because it is this I am that is created in the image of God. So good so far? We are not one with God unless we realize that we are created in the image of that which we call God. Because to be one with God is to know that we are in the Spirit, in the divine ideal, in the I am, and the I am is in us. But we cannot enter into that consciousness or understand it, wherein we know that we are in the Spirit until we are conscious of our exact likeness to the Spirit. Did you follow that? All right, I need someone who represents royalty. I see a hat. Baji Daniels, come on up. How many of you know that you're royalty? But how many of you live from the ideal that you are royalty? All right, so this is the representation of the divine I am. Okay? So, Baji, just as we were doing in our workshop class learning yesterday, just do some Tai Chi moves that would represent the opening, just opening and being available. All right, Ife come up. So another example of royalty. But now, you know that old game? You're going to stand behind me. You know where I put my arms around, but you put your arms through me? Like that? Okay. So here I am, totally oblivious to the fact that the I amness of royalty, now look at Baji's hand movement, that the I amness of royalty is inside of me. And so I look to the world of the external, and I wish and long that I could have the same possession of that, when in actuality, what? It is where? It is within me. And so, see if you can mimic what it is that she's doing. And this is what we do in life. We stand and we wish. If I could only have that. If I could only be that. When in point of fact, where is it? It is inside of me. But here's the thing. I will never experience that. That's what Christian Larson said. I will never experience the I amness. I will never experience that level of royalty. I will never experience that surrender and that peace. I can look at it all day, but I will never be that until, hang on, until I acknowledge that it is within me. And the moment that I acknowledge the I amness within me is the moment that I realize that there is no separation, but that I amness now come before me and continue, stand in front of me, that all along it has been a part of me. Thank you, my royal queens. Does that make sense? You must become the consciousness of the I am that is within you. Let me say that again. You must become the consciousness of the I am within you in order for the I am within you to be able to manifest, to be, to deliver, to unveil everything that you and I are. So why are we not doing that? I don't know either. So Christian Larson says to enter into that. So it's called by many names. It's called the I am. It's called God. It's called Christ consciousness. In order to enter into that, to become conscious of the real being of that, the real being of this Christ consciousness, is to become identified with and to be able to see the reality of humanity. Because you see, every single one of us is that level of royalty, is that I amness. But I'm not going to be able to see that about you. I'm not going to be able to honor that fully about you until I am able to see it for myself. What I will do is I will covet what you have. I will compare myself to you. In fact, I might even allow my comparison of you to make me angry and judgmental at you and to project upon you all kinds of things that have no basis whatsoever in the reality of who and what you are. And so the Great Awakening, or I should say the Great Reawakening, is when systematically, one by one, somebody wakes up to their I amness. And another person wakes up to their I amness. And another person wakes up to their I amness. And when that begins to happen, when the synergy of that aliveness starts to come, then the reality of the divinity of who and what we are is finally revealed. When we say that the vision is a world that works for everyone, that world actually already exists. But man, you wouldn't know it, would you? Not by the way in which we treat one another. Not by the way in which we have forgotten so much of what it means to integrate and to be in relationship with one another. At what point in our lives did children start shooting children? At what point did you and I stop playing? Because I think there's something there. We've stopped playing. To play is not aspirational. We're just being. Most of what the world is formulated around now is everything has to be on a productive path. So I have to do this thing in order to get to this thing. I'll never forget decades ago speaking at a church in Southern California, and a man introduced me to his adopted daughter, who was enrolled in violin lessons and gymnastics and the scholastic team and the debate team, and he paraded her around like she was an object. Look at everything that she's doing. And I'll never forget when I looked at her and I said, "When do you play?" Because when we become so wrapped up in trying to be something which is out there, whether it is to please a parent, whether it is to please our social circle, whether it is to please because we feel as though without doing that we will be invalidated and underappreciated, is to forget that what you're trying to aspire to, you already are. And if you've lost the fine art of simply allowing yourself to be and to play, and to just be in the enjoyment of life, even for a small amount of time, then we begin to build up this inner resistance and this inner projection and this inner narrative that says, you're taking something away from me. And you allow that narrative to continue to go on and go on and go on long enough that narrative actually becomes violent. Because we have forgotten the idea that everything that we are condemning is also within inside of us. Because everything that we are projecting on and everything that we are judging is our own inability to honor I am nature. So I tell you, when someone shows up who is living out loud, and by living out loud, they are owning their I amness, and you are in judgment of that. You called that forth. And you called that forth because it may be one of the last few lifelines of opportunity that you get. When you see magnificence shown before you that forces you to make a decision out of your conformity, then I want you to know the I amness within you dragged that vision before you to say, wake up. Not to taunt you or to make you feel bad, but to wake you up. To say, what are you waiting for? What are any of us waiting for? I fell in love with this band from France that I just happened to see this performance of them, and I was instantly drawn in. Any of you ever found a music piece that you're just instantly drawn in? And I was instantly drawn into this piece, and it was so magnetic, and the lead singer was so frenetic and energetic, and his voice was like this old soul coming out of him, and he was just this little white French guy. And I was like, wow, where is that coming from? And there were tears in his eyes, and he was just singing this guttural stuff. And I went, who is this? And I began to research, and I found that he was a part of a duo. They were best friends, met in school, and they started writing music together. And they had this divine idea to put their music out. And they worked together, and they were best friends. And they started to get some notoriety, and the music started to be put out. He said, we put a song on SoundCloud, one of those little feeds, and people started to resonate to it. And one thing happened after another, and they started putting demos out and then EPs out, and then they got this big record deal. And they started to put all their music together, and one of the members died of cancer at 27. And here he was left. And they were working in tandem together. And so the performance that I saw was at this major festival in Paris, and it was the first time he had ever been on stage by himself without his partner. And so the emotion that was coming through him was what drew me in. And I began to read up all about them, and I thought, wow, what would it be like to be able to see him in concert, live? And they're touring, and they're always in Europe. And then I looked, and there was a performance that was happening in Brooklyn on Thursday night. This last Thursday night. I had airline miles. I had a friend who has a couch. And the I amness within me said, if you really want it, then make a decision. And so I cashed in some miles, and I was excited. And then it dinged on my phone about my reservation, and I had made the reservation wrong. So I had made it for the right departure time, but I was also returning during the concert, and I was like, you were supposed to do that on Friday, David. So I'd called the airlines, and they said, well, we'll waive the fee, but it's going to cost you this many more miles. And I went, the I amness in me really wants to have this experience. I said, okay. So it didn't matter that there was a hiccup along the way. The I amness is still there. And so I show up, and I fly into LaGuardia. I take my little transportation. I get my key from my friend's apartment. And this will show you, at almost 60, I get there early. No one gets there early for a concert that starts at 10 p.m. And I got up at 5 that morning. And the I amness is going, I don't know, David. Is there a bench to curl up somewhere? But this energy was there, and I started walking around the Williamsburg district of Brooklyn, and I was just thinking how fabulous this area was. And I walked into this diner, but it was really more of an upscale kind of bougie place, and I sat at the counter, and I started getting into this conversation with the bartender behind the thing, and he asked me why I was there, and I told him, and he said, wow, that's really cool. You flew all this way for a concert? I said, yeah, I've never done that before in my whole life. He goes, they must be really good. I said, I hope so. And we started to talk, and I discovered that he had been in music and that he had been a vocalist, and he was studying jazz, and some things happened, and he was doing this to make ends meet, and he was at a crossroads. And long story short, we got into a deep conversation about life, and my meal was comped, and got a free drink of something. I don't know what it was. And I'm, well, this is good. And then I walked to the venue, and the doors were going to open at 8 o'clock. And I walked in. I was like the first person. Like, oh, my God. And the guy just looked at me, and he went, first time here? I said, yeah. And so we chatted a bit, and he told me the opening act was going to be awful and that I would hate it. And so why didn't I just hang out with him? And his person didn't arrive to help him with the tickets, and the venue was actually sold out, and would I help him? And I said, sure. So I'm taking tickets. I had bought a couple of extra because, just in case there were others who could go with me. And so I had those in my pocket. And so people who showed up who were just really, really upset that it was sold out, I said, here. And I gave them that. And then it was one of those kind of big mosh pit things where about 300 people would stand for the concert. And I went, whew, I've been up since 5 this morning. And I looked at him and said, is there any place to sit? And he said, yeah, up in the top, there's just a U-shaped little bench area up there. And he goes, it's actually the best view in the whole place. And he said, I'll let you know the moment that the gate opens. So I went in and I went up there and I sat there. And I thought, man, what must it be like, these guys traveling with this intense schedule, because they're traveling for the whole year, and it's like one night after another, all over across the world. I thought, what must that be like? I'd love to just shake his hand. And so I'm up in the balcony, and these two guys come, and they said, is anybody sitting here? And I said, no. And they sit down, and I hear them talking, and they mentioned the singer's name. And I said, oh. And they said, oh, yeah, we're friends with him. And right at that moment, there's a little curtain up there, and he comes back and he starts to talk to them, and that's the guy from the thing. And I'm like, and they stand up and they hug and they shake, and so I stand up with them like I'm with them. And I just shake his hand, and I'm like, ah. And yeah, it's that thing, I'll never wash this hand again. It was one of the most incredible concerts ever. And I knew all of the lyrics to every single song that they sang. And I sang them out loud with great abandon. And at one point, I realized that I was happy. I realized that I was happy. Like, genuinely happy. And I realized that happiness was always there. But sometimes the only way in which you and I can retrieve's not the right word, that reveal it, is by going through this particular journey to realize that unless we are willing to open ourselves up and be available for that, then it will always be elusive. If we don't learn to play, if we don't learn to relax, if we don't learn to simply begin to ease into the I amness, that it doesn't have to be so hard. Your spirituality isn't meant to carry around some energy of martyrdom. Your connection to God or to the I am does not have to be connected to whatever wounding that you still want to carry around with you about what happened to you back in the Catholic Church or in the Assemblies of God Church or whatever your family did. Your reawakening to your spiritual magnificence does not require you to crawl on your knees on glass to Mecca. But it requires for you to simply go, I am that. And for some reason, we resist the easiness of that. For some reason, we live in a society that tells us that it doesn't have any value unless it's really, really hard. And so in that scripture in John, when Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He was not talking about himself as a personal pathway. If you look at that, I am, which we've been talking about, I am is the way, I am is the truth, I am is the life. And no one can come unto the experience of that but through the acknowledgement of the I am inside of them. Do you see how that scripture has been misinterpreted for so long? In fact, a whole religion bases their doctrine upon a different version of that. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one cometh unto the Father except by me, thinking that this teacher, Jesus the Christ, is the only vehicle by which someone can get to God. When all that it's saying is that I am, the I am is the way. Where is the I am? In you. The I am is the way. The I am is the truth. Not the amorphous truth that can be misinterpreted for our convenience. But it is the truth, and the I am is the life. And no one can come to the awareness of that I am unless they own it within themselves. So there will be no shining armored person on a white horse coming to rescue any of us. There will be no relationship that will fix it for you. There will be no doctor or modality that has any more intuitive knowing about the quality of what you need than what is already inside of you. It doesn't mean that we don't collaborate beautifully with other like-minded individuals. But never once give your power away from the stance that you are helpless or that you don't have the I amness within you. Because the moment that you foster that particular relationship is the moment that you come back to life. Is the moment when the things that you so admire, the beauty that you admire comes and it shakes your hand. And it says, welcome. And you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want to acknowledge that level of the inherent you?
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.